Members, good morning. May I call to order the session number 14 of the Special Finance Committee. The purpose of the Special Finance Committee meeting is to vet the estimates for the government in 2013 and 14 and to ensure that the requested funding will not exceed the funding needed for the execution of the various items. I will look at how many members who would like to speak, and then I will decide on the time limit for each member. Please press the button if you like to speak, members. I would like to remind members that all questions have to be directly related to the estimates. If you would like to do follow-up to the written replies, please quote the reply number at the top right-hand corner of the reply. For example, THB bracket H001. To facilitate the conduct of the meeting, the Secretariat has come up with a new computer interface so as to allow everybody to be able to search for the relevant reply effectively. Such will also be displayed in the screens. If there is not enough time, members can of course ask supplementary questions in a written form, and the standard forms have been put in front of you. Please, if you do have a supplementary to ask, return the standard form to the clerk before the end of the meeting today, and then the administration has already said that they would reply before the debate on the budget will take place. I'd like to thank the officials for attending the meeting. On the housing side, we have a number of officials, and then we will have transport taken up in session number 15. Now over to you, Secretary, for an introductory remark. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to brief members on the government's major initiatives on housing in the new financial year. First of all, supply of public rental housing. Our objective is to provide PRH to low-income families who cannot afford private rental accommodation. As at end December last year, there were about 115,300 general applications on the waiting list for PRH and about 106,900 non-elderly one-person applications under the quota and point system. Starting from the 1st of April 2013, the waiting list income limit is on average 6% higher than that of last year. The Housing Authority will construct about 79,000 PRH flats in the coming 5 years. The government has also decided to increase the supply of PRH and will adopt a production target of at least 100,000 PRH units in total for the 5 years starting from 2018. In addition, there is an average of about 7,000 flats recovered every year from surrender of flats by existing tenants, as well as through enforcement action against abuse of PRH resources. Including these recovered flats, there would be an average of some 22,000 flats available for allocation each year over the next 5 years. Second, rent payment for PRH tenants for 2 months. To help ease the burden of grassroots, the Financial Secretary proposed to pay 2 months' rent for tenants living in PRH units of the HA and the Hong Kong Housing Society. 3 new HOS flats. The government has decided to resume the development of home ownership scheme, HOS, will provide a total of some 17,000 HOS flats over the 4 years starting from 2016-17, and thereafter will provide an annual average of about 5,000 HOS flats. In end March, the HA launched the sale of the remaining some 800 surplus HOS flats, which were formerly built at a ratio of 60:40 for eligible green form and white form applicants respectively. For HOS secondary market, during the interim period from now until the first batch of new HOS flats are completed in 2016-17, the HA has launched an interim scheme to allow 5,000 WF buyers each year to purchase HOS flats with premium not yet paid in the HOS secondary market. Successful applications will be announced next month. 5. Subsidized housing under the HKHS. The HKHS has recently introduced Greenville Villa, which provides nearly 1,000 small and medium-sized flats to respond to the HOS home ownership needs of low to medium income households. The government has also set aside a site in Sha Tin in Siu Lek Yuen for the HKHS to develop a similar housing project expected to provide some 700 flats. six private property market. As regards the private market, we would adopt a multi-pronged approach to increase the housing land supply. As mentioned in the budget speech, it was estimated that 24,000 first-hand residential property units could be offered for sale this year. As for the next 3 to 4 years, a total of 67,000 first-hand units would come onto the property market. This is a first-time high. The supply of the first-hand residential property would be highest since September 2007. As a result of the persistent low interest rate environment and influx of capital, the property market is irrationally exuberant, and this is contrary to economic fundamentals. To ensure the healthy and stable development of the property market, the FS announced the enhancement of the SSD and the introduction of the BSD in October 2012. The LegCo is now scrutinizing the relevant bill. In response to the market situation, the FS announced another round of demand-side management measures in February this year, and that is to increase the ad valorem stamp duty for residential and non-residential properties and to advance the charging of the ad valorem stamp duty on non-residential property transactions from the conveyance on sale to the agreement for sale. The Financial Services and Treasury Bureau will submit the relevant bill next week. The LTHS Steering Committee is now assessing the housing needs of the community in the medium to long term to map out a housing supply strategy and to ensure the optimum use of the existing land and housing resources. We'll release the consultation document in around the middle of the year for public consultation. 8. Regulating the sale of first-hand residential properties. The new ordinance in regulating the first-hand sale of residential properties will be fully implemented with effect from the 29th of April 2013. The implementation of the ordinance will help enhance transparency and fairness of the sales of first-hand residential properties and consumer protection. The Sales of First-Hand Residential Property Authority (SRPA), set up early this month, has issued guidelines, practice notes, and frequently asked questions and answers, etc. on the ordinance, while the electronic platform will be available for public access starting from end of this month. We're happy to take questions. Thank you. We have this session until 11:15. There are 7 members waiting to ask questions. 5 minutes each. Wang Kwok-heng, Priscilla Leung, Ng Leung Sing, James To, Tony Che, Joseph Lee, Leung Chi Chang, and Wu Chi Wai. Wang Kwok-heng. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions for the Secretary. The first one, THB bracket H029. According to the reply, in the next 5 years on Hong Kong Island, the PRH supply will just be 200. I believe they would be from the site at Chai Wan Industrial Building, and that would be converted to 1 to 2 person units. But this will not be able to satisfy the demand from grassroots for PRH. Indeed, this will fall far short of expectation and demand. Secretary, do you have a plan to build more PRH units on Hong Kong Island in the next 5 years? And also, have you considered or have you identified housing estates that can be redeveloped so that you can provide more PRH units? That's the first question. Second question, according to the speech of the Secretary, under Para 17, you talk about subsidized housing provided by the Hong Kong Housing Society. The Hong Kong Housing Society plays an assisting role in providing public housing. It has indeed a very important role. We understand that in this year, in Shao Kei Wan, there will be these so-called luxury elderly homes to be sold by HKHS. At the housing panel of the LegCo, I have asked the same question on behalf of members and have got a reply already, and it is said that the relevant arrangement is according to what has been done in the last term government. So the redeveloped flats will be sold at market price. If that is the case, as you can see on Hong Kong Island now, the flats are fetching anywhere from $10,000 a square foot. So how can you say that you are helping to provide subsidized housing? And if you cannot do that, how can you help the administration in addressing the housing needs of the public? My question for the Secretary is, what about the role of the HKHS? Will you review the role to be played by the Hong Kong Housing Society? Because the Shao Kei Wan project, of course, is now a fait accompli. It has been decided by the last term of government. I'm talking about the future. Shouldn't the Hong Kong Housing Society provide really subsidized housing in the future? 2 questions. Secretary, I will give a brief reply. Regarding the next 5 years and also the provision of new PRH units, well, actually, in the urban area, there will be actually a relatively high number. As for redevelopment, indeed, we will consider aged housing estates. If there is development potential, and if there are reception units in the same district, and also in terms of maintenance and repair, if we think that it is uneconomical to go ahead with the maintenance and repair, then we'll consider redevelopment seriously. But please concentrate on Hong Kong Island, because I'm an elected member from Hong Kong Island. If we look at the redevelopment potential, we will look at the entire territory as a whole. We'll look at Hong Kong Island, Kowloon Peninsula, and the new territories. But of course, when we have the actual assessment, we'll then make a decision as to which estates can be suited for redevelopment. But actually, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng is asking for a figure for the next 5 years vis-a-vis the provision of PRH on Hong Kong Island. Is it that you don't have a figure? Chairman, actually, in the next 5 years, we are going to provide PRH in the different areas, and I think we have submitted the relevant information to the housing panel of LegCo already. In other words, there won't be more on Hong Kong Island. There will just be 200 resulting from the conversion of the Chai Wan Industrial Building. I think that is the case. Can I defer to the PS?
Indeed, we are building a number of projects on Hong Kong Island in Chai Wan area, for example. We have projects that will be coming on within the next 5 years. But I think, as the Secretary has said, our approach is that we break down the territory into basically 3 large regions, and we look at urban region.
No, Duncan, I think you need to supplement. He asked specifically in the next 5 years whether what units you would be having in Hong Kong Island. Do you have that number?
Yes, we have that number. I can provide that separately.
Separately, okay. 局長盡快講講房協個角色好嗎？
Secretary, we have quite some time, so I'll give you 20 seconds to address the issue of housing society. If we are talking about subsidized housing, we have to comply with the eligibility criteria decided by the government. But I think Mr. Wong Kwok Heng is talking about cooperation projects between Hong Kong Housing Society and the URA. I think you are talking about a different matter. Sorry, Mr. Wong, your time is up. Ms. Priscilla Leung. Thank you, Chairman. I do understand that members of the public have a great need for PRH. That is why I always support the provision of more PRH and HOS. However, while we do so, and if someone is looking at the increase of the plot ratio, I think we really also have to avail ourselves to the living environment and the quality of the environment for the residents. In the past 5 years in Sham Shui Po, I think there are a few questions. Those are questions 018, 019, and also 023. Those have to do with PRH provision and also the plot ratio issue. And in 018 in Sham Shui Po, there will be the addition of 1,500 units. Actually, in the last term of government, we have talked to the administration that at the waterfront number 6 site, we wouldn't like to have a kind of walled effect high rises. I understand that in this project, there will be 5 blocks. My question is, while you seek to provide more flats, are you doing enough to look at ventilation and the quality of the environment, and will there be a walled effect? And I think Wong Kwok Heng has asked a very good question. There are so few units in Hong Kong Island, but in Sham Shui Po from Nam Chong Station, I think the government is owing an explanation to Sham Shui Po. They like to have PRH, but then it is already very crowded. Is it that when you do your design, you want to shield the entire waterfront with high buildings? Do you want to crowd everything into Sham Shui Po? Yesterday, I asked the SHA, and there was no pledge given to me that while you do so, you will provide enough district facilities to the Sham Shui Po residents. They have been asking for a community hall with a seating capacity of 1,000. Are you going to provide it? And also in the future, how can you prevent a deterioration of the living environment? Because you are now closing off the only ventilation opening for Sham Shui Po residents. So how can you balance living environment with the provision of PRH? Have you looked at it from the angle of design and also a possible reduction of flats? Well, 3+1 was already the compromise, but then you are going to provide 5 blocks. So residents are really reacting strongly. Secretary, Chairman, in every district, when we provide PRH and HOS units, we must do technical feasibility study and also EIA, TIA, and also other complementary district facilities. Ms. Leung talked about Sham Shui Po. Maybe I can defer to Ms. Ada Fong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Leung, for the question concerning the development in Sham Shui Po and also in the districts at large. We keep talking to the district councils. We will conduct technical studies to make sure that there is no world effect. We also talk to the local people with regard to the provision of district facilities. Say, for example, there will be bus stops, wet markets, sports facilities, indoor recreation centers, so on and so forth. As for the City Hall with 1,000 seating capacity, we are considering that. We'll make sure that there will not be a world effect. We will also provide community facilities as well. And there will be HOS and PRH units, and I hope members and the district councils will support that. Priscilla Leung. My office is in Sham Shui Po. We fully understand the need for housing, but we've been to a place where you really can see the bathroom of the next block, and you can see people brushing their teeth. The buildings are so close. Now, in terms of living conditions and environmental quality, will there be any problems? I hope you will get experts so that you will not cause any problems to the living of the people. Ms. Ng Leung Shing. I'm referring to THP 014 and also serial number 041, and then it is there will be 17,000 new HOS and 79,000 PRH units. That's roughly the supply in the coming 4 years. I want to ask the administration on a policy issue concerning whether there is any need for revaluation of public housing. Now, the market has changed so substantially. Shouldn't the public be informed how much public resources have been devoted into public housing? If there is no new valuation, shouldn't it be the right time to done another valuation of all the public housing assets? Another question is this. There are about 200,000 or so applicants on the waiting list for PRH. So, and the number will continue to increase. So, will there be any cap on the waiting list? Or will you consider, say, getting more land and even getting more land from outside Hong Kong in order to provide public housing? As for those who are able to rent in the housing and the private markets, and yet they are still occupying PRH units. Yet, because of the fact that their assets do not hit the ceiling, therefore they can still remain in the PRH, and they will keep occupying such PRH units, and that will only delay the turnover of PRH. So how are you going to deal with that? The Secretary, let me answer the three questions briefly first. If we are to do a valuation of PRH, it really depends on whether we're going to value them according to a market price. We can, of course, make such an assessment. In terms of public housing supply, we do not deal with that from this perspective. We are to meet the housing needs of low-income families. But we are to do a certain kind of valuation technically that can be done. Secondly, concerning the waiting list, we've observed that there is a significant increase in comparison with the end of the previous year. With the end of this year, there has been an increase of about 20 to 30%. And whether the supply will be unlimited under the present policy, the government has the policy commitment to those who meet the requirements. If they are eligible, they will be provided with PRH, and we will maintain the waiting time target of 3 years for the first allocation. That is only for the general waiting list. As for non-elderly applicants under the point and quota system, they are not covered by the 3-year waiting time commitment. In terms of our overall housing policy with other channels to enable greater mobility, and those who have better means will move out. We have the double rent policy. That's about those who are able to move out. The so-called well-off tenant policy targets at this group of people. As for Mr. Ng's point on the two criteria, one, income limit, second, asset limit, which are employed to decide whether one should move out of PRH. The policy was formed years ago, and it was fully debated before that was decided upon. James Toh. My question is in relation to the reply 011 and 018. In the past 3 years, on average, the HA is able to recover about 8,000 units per year. In comparison with in the coming 5 years, average production is 15,000. So the total will at most be 23,000 per year for allocation. In December last year, the number on the waiting list exceeded 200,000. 100,000 families and also 100,000 non-elderly applicants. And that will take about 4 to 5 years to allocate flats to them. How can you meet your pledge of 3 years? And how can you meet the needs of the non-elderly applicants? For those who are above age 35, the housing authorities agreed that these people have a strong demand for housing. They are living in subdivided flats, and even the CE said that he regretted very much. And will the housing authority increase production of PRH and HOS so that there will be more PRH units for allocation? The Secretary, concerning the question raised by Mr. Toh, we are facing a very strong pressure on public housing, and that's why the administration is working very hard on finding suitable sites for PRH. Even in the urban area, we still consider how to increase development density. And in doing so, we also need to balance the interests of the local people. And in fact, Ms. Leung has pointed out this question. And we have to resolve all that in view of, in fact, the LTH's steering committee is considering various means so as to achieve a breakthrough under various constraints. As for the commitment of first allocation within 3 years, we are not going to change that lightly. If we are to observe this target, we need to face great pressure. We understand that. We hope that in the future there can be better ways to improve the mobility or the turnover of PRH. As for non-elderly applicants, the steering committee agreed that for those who are above age 35, some ways should be found so as to reduce the waiting time for those who are above 35. According to the analysis of those who have been housed, we are able to maintain the pledge of 3 years. And for elderly, average waiting time was about 1.4 to 1.5 years. Now, can the Secretary tell us, with regard to the 3-year pledge, do you query that among the 200,000 applicants, when they are given flats, they will not be eligible? Now, when it comes to the time when flats are to be allocated, some may not be eligible. But according to our track record, we are able to maintain the waiting time of 3 years. In fact, the average waiting time for the first allocation is less than 3 years. But we face great pressure for meeting that. Every time you can assign a unit to somebody, the assigned unit which is next to the refuge chamber or a unit in which somebody has died. Well, there are not too many flats in which people have died, but we do our best to meet the target. Now, you say, according to analysis, you're able to meet the target. But in the past few years, just past few years, why you were able to achieve such a target? In the past, there weren't 200,000 units, 200,000 applicants. Was it that there were too many people who were not eligible when it was the time for the allocation? If that was the case, I'm willing to accept that, but you must give me the numbers. We did provide analysis to the housing panel. Concerning the 3-year waiting time, it is in relation to the general waiting list. There are more than 100,000 applicants. We face pressure even for that group. And this pressure will continue to increase, and I agree with you. But at present, we will strive to maintain that. Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Many are concerned about the increase in number of applicants. According to the Secretary, he is still confident that he will be able to meet the 3-year target. I just want to seek a confirmation from him. In the coming year, he's able to meet the pledge, right? If demand keeps increasing, and if the applicants are really eligible, just assume that it is the present situation. According to our calculation, by and large, the average waiting time is about 3 years. That is average. Some may be more, some may be less. That is reflected in the numbers provided to the housing panel. The average waiting time of 3 years is a yardstick. If we are of the view that we are not able to achieve that, we have to face the fact and we have to adjust that. But we'll try the best to meet that. Mr. Tony Chen. Now, in his speech, paragraph 5, the Secretary said that the Housing Society is also involved in provision of subsidized housing. I want to refer to reply serial number THBH024, a question asked by Mr. KK Fong. That is said that we would consider inviting HKHS to develop subsidized sale projects should land resources permit, having regard to the actual circumstances. Can further elaborations be made to that? The Secretary. In fact, the HS has been providing subsidized housing in terms of rental flats and flats for sale. Therefore, this time, the FS paid rent for PRH tenants, and that also for 2 months, and that also covers the units under the HS. As for the sale of flats, subsidized sales projects, the HS will play a role. Say the HS has developed the Greenville Villa, and there will be a site in Siu Lek Yuen. In terms of rent, flat for rent and flat for sale, the HS has a role to play. And in terms of land premium, we have a suitable policy to make sure that the HS is able to provide subsidized housing. Mrs. Tony Chair. Now, the population is aging, and that's a common concern. With regard to the provision of housing for the elderly, there is such arrangement for the elderly. But for those who are not eligible for public housing, will the Secretary also consider doing something or allowing the HS to do something to provide housing units and meet the needs of the elderly who are not eligible for public housing? As for elderly people who are eligible to public housing, they have already been looked after under the public housing policy. If they meet the requirement or eligibility requirement of subsidized sales units, then they will also be able to buy those units. The HS has targeted at elderly people who have better means. But that is not the mainstream of public housing policy. As reflected in the questions asked by members, we are facing the issue of more and more low-income families who are applying for PRH. And in terms of priority, since there is limited resources, in terms of provided public housing, priority should be given to the low-income families first. Mr. Tony Chair, if I may ask on THBH008, I hope further information can be provided after the meeting with regard to the change of housing in the past 10 years, the average per capita area. My question is THB029. In the it is about in the coming 5 years, the provision of PRH and HOS. In the coming 5 years, in the urban areas, there will be more supply of public housing, but on Hong Kong Island, there is none. On the waiting list, how many applicants are applying for PRH on Hong Kong Island? If I'm living on Hong Kong Island and apply for PRH, there is no PRH on Hong Kong Island, so I'm forced to go to other districts. Will you therefore assign units, say in Tin Shui Wai to me, so as to show that you meet your 3-year target? In terms of those who are waiting, on the waiting list, what are their distribution within the 18 districts? People live in one district would like to get PRH within the same district. So can you provide us with more information in terms of regional distribution?
秘書長答。
Who is to take this question? I will refer to the PS. Of course, there is a mismatch because it is impossible for us to allocate a flat to applicants in the same area as they asked to because there are limited resources. Mr. Duncan?
I think we need to look at our approach. We don't break it down district by district. We look at it on a regional basis. We have the key regions, urban, extended urban, and new territories. People apply within those regions. As far as the allocation is concerned, it depends, as the Honourable Member said, upon whether we have units coming on stream within those areas. And indeed, in the last 2 years, we have had urban area developments coming on stream, places like Homentien, Samseipo, and so on. But we don't look at the numbers in terms of 18 districts. And we've always made it very clear that you're applying for a regional application. Having said that, of course, even on Hong Kong Island, we do have recycled units coming on stream in our existing estates in Aberdeen, in Chai Wan, and so forth. So there are opportunities, even within our existing system, even if we don't have new developments, to allocate units within, say, Hong Kong Island or Homentien, if they are prepared to accept recycled units. So that's the way we approach it, Mr. Chairman.
But you have no new units coming up. All you're talking about is recycled units.
We do have some units on Hong Kong Island. As
200, 200. According to Mr. Wong.
That's correct.
200.
And just let me clarify, that's not the units that are the Chai Wan Flatted Factory. These are new build units on a dedicated site. But as I said, it's always going to be a mix of new units and recycled units. That's the way we approach this. And we also, when we allocate a unit, it's done on a random basis. We certainly do not allocate units on the first offer just next to refuse collection points or on low floors. It's purely random. So people have the opportunity on a random basis.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Joseph Lee.
the administration provides with some figures on not just on the newly constructed items, but also on the possible recycled items, basically in which district, so that the people will be reassured that, well, they still have choices, not just, have to choose those far and remote distance from their, let's say, living districts.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I may, obviously we will try to provide information on the new units because we know that, we control that. We don't have information specifically on the forthcoming to-be-released units because it depends on the choice of the individual people. People might die, people might apply to move out. There are many different reasons why these recycled units come out. So I'm afraid I can't give you a projection. I can just give you some indication. And as I said, on average, it's between 7,000 and 8,000 recycled units per annum that are available for reallocation to waiting list people. I should add that indeed, on top of that, we also have to take into account the needs of our existing tenants who wish to move. So there is an opportunity, for example, people who live in Tin Soi Wai who wish to apply for urban area flats, and there are certain family circumstances, we can also allocate flats to them. So they also take up these reallocated units.
Mr. Lan Chi-chang, I have two questions. First, THB 036. It's a follow-up on allocation or rehousing. As we all know that the administration is determined to build a lot of housing and to redevelop urban areas and resume land. In the coming 3 to 5 years, does the administration have an estimate? Say, for example, when it comes to rehousing due to demolition, clearance rehousing, there are two groups. One of them is eligible for interim housing, the other group not. Is there sufficient interim housing for people who are affected by clearance? Secretary, first of all, I will just give an overall answer, and then I will defer to Mr. Fong, Ms. Fong. When it comes to rehousing, whether they are affected by HA clearance or other projects, say, for example, demolition or land resumption, if they've been displaced, we have interim housing. Currently, we have a sufficient supply for interim housing. There are still some vacant ones for emergency cases. For specific information, I would defer to Ms. Fong. Say, for example, Jitin Village is a clearance case. We will liaise with the relevant department to deal with clearance and rehousing. Mr. Leung Chi-Chiang, I have another question. Just now, the Secretary mentioned about the construction of private housing. Yesterday, and when it comes to supply of housing land, I touched upon a major point. Currently, the administration has introduced B ad valorem stamp duty and BSD, these harsh measures. The current sentiment in the market has been dampened. And according to the Secretary, there will be about 67,000 private housing units being constructed. In other words, it will solve some housing problems. But on the other hand, they have introduced harsh measures, and they want more supply in the private market. But in my opinion, if you introduce harsh measures, will developers continue to build more units, and will they indeed churn out 60,000 units, as you've said? Secretary, just now the 60,000 units refer to those in the coming 3 to 4 years. It is a figure estimated by the administration, and they are first-hand residential units. And as to when they will be made available in the market and the price level, it depends on the market. The administration has introduced measures, and it's not just because of the measures. There are other factors in the market, say, for example, and as a result of all these factors, buyers have become cautious. We hope that potential buyers will not be caught up by the exuberance in the market. We, of course, aim to ensure a stable supply in both the public and private housing market. And when it comes to private housing market, there is indeed a situation in which when prices continue to increase, people are afraid that they will not be able to buy a flat. Please let the Secretary finish first. And when there are some slacking in the market, it will cause buyers to reconsider. But we don't want to introduce sudden changes in housing policies. But these measures introduced by the administration will affect the market, the private market. When there is dampened sentiment in the market, then the developers will hesitate to build more. So the figure will not be achieved. Secretary, well, when it comes to the 60,000 units we refer to, actually, there are indications that they will be constructed. Say, for example, works have already commenced. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Just now the Secretary mentioned about redevelopment of PRH estates. We know that under the revitalization policy for old PRH estates, they have a plan to extend their lifespan for about 10 to 15 years. But when it comes to Warlock Estate and Choi Hong Estate, and they in Kowloon East, they are old estates. So when it comes to redevelopment of PRH units, so apart from the potential for redevelopment, will you consider factors as, say for example, the time it takes for redevelopment, trigger the redevelopment program, say for example, start by those built in the 50s or 60s? Otherwise, I am worried that it will be a situation when everyone's just sitting on their hands waiting but not knowing when it will happen. So my question is, when it comes to redevelopment of PRH estates, there are some aged estates, and with your revitalization to extend their lifespan, will there be a specific program for redevelopment? Secretary. When it comes to redevelopment of PRH estates, there is a strong view asking for sustainability. So if the estate is structurally sound through regular maintenance and repair, we will try to extend their lifespan as far as possible. However, due to the recent increase in the demand for PRH units, we're exploring certain areas. If there is redevelopment potential and we can increase supply, we will consider it. And if repairment cost is too high, we will also consider it. And there is another factor. Will there be suitable units nearby for rehousing for the tenants affected? If there is none, it will be difficult for redevelopment and it will take longer. So we will take into account all three factors together. Before we get an assessment of the situation, it's not appropriate for us to say which estate will undergo redevelopment, because this will create uncertainty for tenants. But if we have any idea as to which estate we're quite sure about redevelopment, of course we will disseminate the information as soon as possible. Mr. Wu, my question was extending the lifespan of estates, but from 50 years to 65 years. Do you have relevant arrangements? Secretary. We don't do it in a mechanical way. Of course, the age and potential factors. Well, but just now you said that under revitalization, the estate may see an extension of lifespan by 15 years. It is something that is said openly. To a certain extent, it is an undertaking to tenants, and it will create a reasonable expectation that under the revitalization they will be able to live there for another 15 years before they face the problem of redevelopment. So you have to carefully think about the whole project and whether there will be resources supporting it. Secretary, I fully understand what Mr. Wu said. Any follow-up? No. Next, Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Thank you. Just now, Mr. Wu Chi-wai has said some things that I have in mind. It's not just about Kowloon East on Hong Kong Island like Wah Fu. It's over 40 years old. And if the Secretary visit the building, so you will see that on the external wall is supported by just steel claddings. And they may be able to live there for about 8 to 10 years, but it doesn't feel good. So my question is serial number 59, part 4 of the question. That is, whether 17,000 HOS flats can be constructed, granted to the HA for the purpose in the 4 financial year starting from 2016 to 17 in order to achieve the targets. So where are these sites? Well, 4 years is a long time, and we don't know whether we have one person, one vote for the chief executive. Well, I hope that it will be easier for us to vote to select our own chief executive than to have PRH units constructed. May I be allowed to ask my second question? It seems that the recent exuberance in the market has cooled down, and according to the press, that some major developers have slashed their prices. For some sites, over 10% as well. So is it time to reconsider relaxation of your demand side measures to inject some vitality back into the market? Because it's two sides of the coin. Well, if you manage the demand, it may reduce demand, but at the same time, it would reduce supply. And developers may hesitate when it comes to bidding for a site. Well, of course, there is a need for demand-side management when the market is exuberant. But once prices drop, it will affect the whole market. So should you do things in an opportune time to put a brake on it for the market to breathe? If you haven't considered so, when will you do it? Would you wait for a further drop of 10%, 15, or even 20? What will trigger you to reconsider your position? And when it comes to supply, say for example the 2,100 units, we have the information. We will supply the information to you. Now, I think Mr. Sin is talking about the 17,000 flats. About the 4 sites or what? It's a question asked by Mr. Wu. Question 59. Question 4. The 17,000 flats in 4 years, starting from 2016. Will you be able to identify the site? Yes. So can you do so now? We'll supply the information after the meeting. And when it comes to the market situation, and of course there are many different speculations about the market every day. I've been reading a lot of commentaries. Some say that the prices will drop, and others said no. And of course, when it comes to price reduction, there are just individual cases. We need time to monitor the situation. Some say that there will be an downward adjustment of 10%, but that is only an estimate. If there are major changes in the market, and indeed it will affect the administration's decision in demand-side management measures, in last October or February this year, when the FS introduced the 2 rounds of demand-side management measures, he said that when necessary, these measures will be lifted. But of course, there are a number of factors to be taken into consideration: transaction prices, external market situation. Well, what about the indicators? Even for the Federal Reserve, that they will consider the position taking into account a number of factors. Please wait for the Secretary to finish. When there are changes in interest rate in the external environment, of course, it will affect the markets as well. All these changes will be taken into consideration. That's why, as the FS said, we introduce subsidiary legislation by way of negative vetting, so that when necessary, the measures can be changed. Hopefully, we will get members' support in LegCo, so when it comes the time when we need to make adjustments, they can be done in a timely manner. Mr. Lo Wai Kok. Thank you. Just like Mr. Wu Chiu-wai and Sin Chung Kai, I am also concerned about redevelopment of PRH estates. I've seen some figures recently. Currently, for PRH estates, PRH units under 10 years old, about 90%. Those between 10 to 90,000 units, and those between 10 to 20 years, 200,000 units. So the number has dropped greatly compared to the previous 10 years. So for new PRH units and those that are redeveloped, what are the figures for those that are within 10 years and over 10 years? Of course, we need to redevelop the estate to improve the living condition. with the redevelopment, the land can be used more optimally because you can increase the plot ratio and to increase the units available. And even when it's not a major redevelopment, for some old PRH estates, you can maybe break down the units into smaller ones. The ratio of larger units and smaller units in older estates are different because in the past the demand for smaller units was smaller. So can there be some adjustments, changes to increase the number of small PRH units? Well, perhaps you can answer me first. If you don't have the figures, you please apply it after the meeting. I believe what Mr. Low is referring to is the number of redeveloped units in the past 10 years.
We'll supply the figures after the meeting. If the redevelopment has to do with the entire estate, then the time taken and the reception facilities would also have to be considered, and it is not an easy thing to do. However, if there is redevelopment potential and if indeed we can find reception resources in the vicinity, we'll be very happy to consider any project. And in the LTHS process, we understand that there is this demand for PRH in the community, and we'll certainly actively review the situation. As for whether in existing PRH estates we can do conversion to units so that we can adjust the number of units, like breaking up bigger units into smaller ones, so that we can tackle demand and tackle the different mix of demands. Well, the actual questions can be taken by Ms. Ada Fong, I think, and she will let you know the possibility of doing this. Thank you. Generally speaking, whenever possible, we will always try to meet demand in old estates. If they are already aged and if we think that they can still be used for 15 years, then we will at the same time look at their redevelopment potential. But as for breaking up larger units, that may be a little complicated because that might amount to rebuilding the entire building. And you might have to vacate the entire building first. Say, for example, in Chaiwan Industrial Building, we indeed move everybody out, and then we can think of conversion of the entire building. So that would afford the opportunity of breaking up bigger units into smaller ones. And it would take time to consider each and every project, but we thank the member for the view. Dr. Low, just now the Secretary said that he would let us have figures about the number of redeveloped units for every 10 years in the past. Now I'd like to know your future plans. The Secretary said that he would consider doing this and that, but do you have a more specific plan for the future vis-à-vis redevelopment? You may have to adjust the plan as you go along, but at least let us know your initial thinking, say, for the next 5 years, 10 years, in terms of redevelopment. Secretary, at present, the information that we can divulge, it's about the announcements we have already made, including Pac-Tin Estate. But as for aged buildings and estates, if we are doing the assessment and if after the assessment we think that there is potential and if we have reception resources, then certainly we will carry forward the assessment. But it is impossible for us to let you know what will be done in the next few years. But once we are ready, we will announce the plan. Sorry, your time is up. Sorry. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Chairman. Michael Soon carried out 9 measures, and that created a lot of evil. And now you have done away with rent control, and now landlords can resume their flats. I have said this many times. When are you going to reinstate rent control? I visit residents, and many of them are in subdivided units and partitioned flats. They pay exorbitant prices for those. you don't need to fork out any money. You just have to reinstate the policy. Have you considered it? Because even if you increase the housing subsidy, that would be eaten up in no time by the landowners. When can you do this? Because it doesn't require any public money. Secretary. Rent control was removed. This is in two parts. One, the control on the increase of rent, and secondly, the right to take back the unit. In fact, a protracted discussion and debate preceded that decision, and also there was a debate here at LegCo, and also the CE answered the same question at LegCo not too long ago. There is no intention of the administration to reinstate the rent control policy. However, we are very concerned about the rent trends. Recently, because of changes in the property market, it seems rents are not spiraling anymore, but we have to keep watch. If low-income people are facing huge pressure because of high rentals, the Commission on Poverty and the Community Care Fund, I understand, are helping them. No, Chairman, he is not answering my question. You can continue to pour water into a bowl, but the bowl leaks. If you allow landowners to increase rent, if you allow tenancies to run for a very short while, well, Mr. Leung, he has already answered you. It's just that you don't like his answer. No. He said that there was a protracted debate and there was consensus. Okay, I don't argue with you over that. But now people are saying that this is something very bad for society. But if you are not going to do it, are you asking me to do a private bill to do it? Will you give me votes? Will there be filibustering in LegCo? Okay, if you are not going to do it, I can write a private member's bill to reinstate it. Well, I can't see how the administration can prevent you from writing a private member's bill, because it doesn't have to do with the revenue for the administration. Mr. Cheung, can you allow me to continue? Now, Secretary, can you ask the CE to give the consent? Because this, of course, has to do with your governance and your policies. Secretary, I just said that when the CE was here at a question and answer session, he already indicated that this term of government has no intention to reinstate rent control. Give me a reason. Why? Why is it that when everybody in society is of the feeling that rents have run wild and even subdivided flats fetch astronomical rents, and even niches for the dead are spiraling in prices? Now, I know you do not have any intention to reinstate it. You have no intention to commit suicide, for example. But why? But because of course, you think that life is precious. So give me a reason. You cannot just say you have no intention. I have no intention to make life difficult for you either. But I have a reason, because the rents are having too high a pressure on the poor, who fork out a large part of their income into paying rent. And whatever subsidy you give them, they have gone into the pocket of the landowners. And it's just like when you told Mr. Wong Kwok Heng that 200 may not be enough, but you have no intention to increase the number. Secretary, I fully understand Mr. Leung's concern. Indeed, there are different views in society. Some views are just like Mr. Leung's, that rent control should be reinstated, but then there are other views that the rent control should stay. And I remember there was a debate in LegCo to discuss the issue, and my feeling was that even here the views are diverse. Will you do a large-scale public opinion survey so you consult the public within a year? Can you allow him to continue? Secretary, we'll keep watch of the situation. Sorry, I did not hear you. I said I would keep watch of the rental trends. Will you do it within a year? Sorry, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, your time is up. Please wait for the second round. Sometimes you interject with questions and, well, you did not hear any answers from the Secretary. Did you? Okay, I'll give him 2 more seconds. Secretary, would you like to take that question? If it is about policies, whether it be housing policies or other policies, we can always do public opinion surveys whenever there is a need. We did do such surveys whenever there was a need. And also, you do not always have to do surveys in order to gauge the situation. We have heard the different views in society. As I was answering Mr. Leung, indeed, I have received views from Mr. Leung and other deputations that rent control should be reinstated. But then there are opposing views as well. Mr. Chan Kim Po, thank you, Chairman. My question is on reply 004. It is said that the administration will continue to keep a close watch of the property situation, and they will also look at different factors, transaction numbers, affordability, the ratio of mortgage payment and income, etc. And also, when there is balanced supply, then they can consider withdrawing the measures to cool the market. I'd like to ask about this basket of indicators. At what level are the indicators to be before you would consider withdrawing the measures? Actually, there cannot be easy and objective levels. So what is in your mind? And secondly, you said, you should be prepared for withdrawing such measures, but then our property market is subject to external influence, especially the situation is tense in the Korean peninsula, and also there are the new diseases including coronavirus. And I'd like to ask you whether you have any contingency plans. Are you prepared for such influences from external factors? And number 3, these cooling measures are already effective, and sometimes people are talking about rent control, but you must be very careful. Property prices are going down already, and if you think about rent control now, there would be a bigger blow to the market. Some people say you have already done too much to cool the market, so please do not do anything lightly just because you hear a view. And also recently, look at Greenville Villa. We understand that 40% of the people who have the right have given up their right. In the past, people would be so happy if they get the chance to choose a unit, but now they have given up their right. Actually, there is a 30% discount already at Greenville Villa, and so you can see that people have different expectations of the market already. So have you analyzed why so many people have given up their right to choose a unit? And also, will you learn from this experience that actually the so-called potential purchasing power will also disappear when property prices go down? So be careful with your policies. Do not think that there is a solid demand. Rather, if property prices will go down, all the buyers will suddenly disappear, and you must calculate all these into your future policies. Those are the 3 questions. Because of time constraint, I will give a consolidated reply. In the past few years, we have heard views from society, and we have taken stock of our experience in the past decade, and that is we should not stop the supply or increase the supply hugely whenever there is a change in the market. We would like to stabilize the supply, whether it be the public or private sector supply. We believe there should be a steady and stable supply. But of course, the market is open to influence both from the local situation and also from the external environment, and it can be subject to a lot of fluctuations. If there is a huge fluctuation, then we must take some demand side measures, and that is why we have conducted 2 rounds of measures late last year and this year. Indeed, the market is now showing some changes, but our view is that we do not have to draw any early conclusion yet, because we can see assessments of the market showing that people are having different judgments on the situation. If indeed the market stabilizes, if indeed the demand side management measures are no longer needed, as the FS has said, we can consider withdrawing those measures. But our consideration will not be based on easy scientific consideration of factors, but then we have to do a consolidated kind of consideration. But this cannot be easily quantified. In order that we can change our measures when the time demands, we will have to make the amendment of legislation relatively easy. And that is why when we introduced legislation for the demand side measures, we went for the negative vetting mode, so we could adjust the situation more readily. In fact, every day, the relevant policy bureaus and departments are watching the property market. Chairman, can I follow up? The Secretary seems has not commented on the Greenville Villa and as to how many, why so many people have not gone to choose a flat. Secretary, well, whenever there is sale of property, we will see that consumers have their own consideration, including their expectation of the market and their own affordability. We believe such considerations on the part of buyers are just normal. Of course, today, we still feel that there is a solid demand for housing. But as to at what point people would like to enter the market, it is up to people's decision. I have 7 members in the second round. Mr. Gary Fan, would you like to ask a question? No? Okay, I have 7 members lining up for the second round. And also, Mr. KK Fong, you have not asked any questions, so you have 5 minutes in your first round. It's your turn now. Sorry, it seems I am given the chance once I enter the room. Sorry. Chairman, the biggest issue now is land. The administration said it will be able to provide 5,000 more units compared to the time the policy address was announced. So instead of 75,000, you have 79,000. So are you confident and do you think that you can further enhance the figure of 79,000? Secretary, in the 5 years from now, we planned for 75,000 odd, and we now add 3,000 odd more to it. The 3,000 should have belonged to the next 5-year period, but they have been advanced, and we have already got sites for all these. As for post-2018 and the 100,000 units to be built in the 5-year period post-2018, well, we are working on that. Together with the Development Bureau, we are identifying suitable land. Some land might be subject to rezoning, and also there should be technical feasibility studies done first. KK Fong. In other words, you do not have an estimate to further increase 79,000. What you said, we already know. Well, if there is not land, and if the land is not immediately available, then according to the construction timetable, then this is impossible, because the land formation plus superstructure building would require 3.5 years already, and there is also advanced work to be done. So if we have not got the land now, it doesn't mean, it means we cannot increase the number. Secondly, private housing. Well, I think the Development Bureau will be responsible for getting the land, but then the number of units can be decided by you, Secretary. The Development Bureau said that in future there will be 20-odd plots that will be made available. But I remember there should be 11 which have not been supported by the planning department, but nevertheless you have announced them, and it seems over 20,000 units could be provided in total. But as the Secretary for Housing, you said that you hope to provide 45,000 private plus public flats. Are you confident that the land can indeed provide that number of units, or is that just a vague figure? Secretary, well, we have announced that objective because we understand the demand in society. That is why we said post-2018 there would be an average of 20,000 PRH units, and that is how we see the demand. As for HOS, sorry, Secretary, can you directly answer my question? What I mean is we set the objectives or targets because we know the demand, and on that basis we will try to find land. I'm asking you whether you are confident that the land you have will indeed turn out the 45,000 public plus private units that you announced. Well, with regard to private property market, the demand can be different when the market changes. No, I'm not talking about demand, I'm talking about supply. He is not answering my question. I'm talking about demand, he is talking about supply. No, he is getting on with the answer. But are you confident that there will be the supply of 45,000? The demand will depend on the residents. No, this secretary is always clear with his understanding of questions and answering questions. He is clear, but maybe you are not patient. The Development Bureau will have to provide the land to build 20,000 private units every year. This is based on our demand assessment. But as I said, and also in view of the members' views expressed, when the property market changes, the demand will also fluctuate. But then we still use that as a target. Given that target, different bureaus will have to work in a cooperative way to provide the units. He has not answered my question, so ask your question again. The thing is, over 10 sites have not been approved by the Town Planning Board. So are they just put there to impress people? And as the secretary, are you confident you can secure the land? As the administration, we will do our best to try to get the support from society to do town planning or the rezoning of land. Mr. Alan Leong, would you like to ask a question? Because I have already got members waiting to ask questions in the second round. I like to allocate time in a fair manner. I do want to ask a question. Would you like to do it now or later? Are we getting on to the second round? If you don't, we'll enter the second round. Then you go on with your second round first. Mr. Alan Leong has indicated his intention to ask questions, but we have only got 20 minutes. And I have 8 members in the second round. I can only allocate 2 minutes to them each. I will be very strict. 2 minutes including the question and the reply. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng.
Mr. Chairman, you're very good at controlling time. My appreciation to you. Thank you. I want to follow up my first question. I asked the administration to do this. With regard to the role of the housing society in the provision of subsidized housing, in particular, cooperation between the housing society and the URA should be reviewed. As I've pointed out, in Chao Kei Wan, they will have luxury flats for the elderly. The flats will be sold at market price. I've put it down very clearly that this is decided by the previous term of the government. The housing society is a public body and supported by the government. It should play an important role in the provision of subsidized housing. If they continue to sell flats at market price, it is not doing, is not fulfilling its role. I hope that in the future, when the HS provides any housing, the administration should try to review the role of the HS in terms of its role and functions. With regard to the positioning of the HS, it does have a role to play in the provision of subsidized housing. It's also under the regulation of government's policy. But on the other hand, it can also play the role of a developer, and it can cooperate with the URA. And such units are not subsidized units, and therefore they can sell those units at market price. It has different roles. The HS has different roles. I understand Mr. Wong's question. No, your time is up. Your time is up. Ms. Ellen Leong, your first round, 5 minutes. I look specifically at the text of the speaking notes of the Secretary. I have all along raised this point at the meetings of this Council. Now, if you are a small shop operator, you really can't get a shop from the shopping malls of the private sector. The only thing left is, or the only things left behind are the units that are now still managed by the housing department and the malls that have not been sold to the Ling REIT. These shops are for small operators, and the small operators can provide a service to those living in the public housing estate at a reasonable price. I've asked whether more resources can be allocated to speed up the upgrading of the shopping malls of the old housing estates. I was reminded by the Director of Housing that the housing society, I was reminded by the Secretary that the housing society has to be self-financing. Or rather, the shopping malls have to be self-financing, and therefore there will not be any money for upgrading of the shopping malls of the under the Housing Authority. I just want to know whether there is any funding to achieve the target of upgrading the shopping malls under the management of the Housing Authority. I want to ask the Secretary whether he will get resources or fight for resources within the government and within the budget to get some money to achieve a specific policy objective, and that is to speed up the upgrading of the shopping malls of the old housing estates. The Secretary. On the whole, the Housing Authority is self-financing, and the Housing Authority has to operate within its means with regard to upgrading its commercial facilities. The Housing Authority does upgrade its shopping facilities. The Director can supplement.
Through the Commercial Properties Committee of the Housing Authority, we currently have a number of upgrading programs going on for estates, for example, in Sha Tin, Shan Sui Po. It's an ongoing rolling program. And what we do is we consult CPC on both the target and the type of work that we will do. So, for example...
Chairman, well, without disrespect, I'm also a member of the CPC. I know that there is such a timetable, such a plan, but that is too slow. That is too slow. Since the Housing Authority doesn't have enough money to do that, I just want to ask the Secretary whether he will get more money to achieve this end. The Secretary. In discharging a subsidized housing policy, in particular, public housing, there is a commitment on the part of the government. The Housing Authority can therefore talk to the government on further injection funds. At present, the HA is financially sound. In the coming few years, is able to meet its commitments. No, Mr. Chairman, now you're financially sound, but in the CPC is able to see that there is no money to speed up the upgrading of old shopping malls. Now, for that specific target, will you seek funding from the government to this end? The Secretary. Mr. Chairman, if the Housing Authority is of the view that it is necessary to raise this with the administration, the Housing Authority, of course, will do that. As said by the Director, the CPC has a plan to upgrade shopping centers from time to time. Well, you should call him Chairman because the Secretary is also the Chairman. Ms. Priscilla Leung, your second round, 2 minutes. My question number is THBH 036 and 043, and they are about redevelopment of old housing estates. Another housing estate in which I have a ward office is Sheki Mei Estate. I received a call for help or complaints from the residents, because they know that in Park Tin, originally there was a proposal for in situ rehousing. Later, it was said that those living in Park Tin would be moved to the site next to the Kunyam Temple, Area 33. Those in Sekip Mei are of the view that they have not been consulted as far as planning is concerned. Will there be too many high-rise blocks being put up in the ventilation channel? It seems that in terms of planning, the residents of Sekip Mei have not been considered. Now, originally it was said that there would be in situ relocation, resettlement. You only have 30 seconds. I asked my colleague to speak on Park Tin Estate. Who would like to speak on Park Tin? Ms. Fong. Just a short reply. We are still hoping to have in situ resettlement in Park Tin Estate. We'll make use of. We're considering making use of the bus stop. We have no plan to move people to Area 37 or Phase 37, 3 and 7. We need to consider the need for community facilities. Your time is up, Ms. Leung. Please do not try to interject. Ms. Leung. Just now, a member asked the administration how he does his work. I want to ask a member how he does his work. A member is receiving more than $80,000 per month. Public housing is to provide housing to those who cannot afford private housing. Now, for the member who has the means, he is making $80,000 per month. He is still living in a public housing estate. Why doesn't he ask himself how he is doing his job? I want to ask whether the administration will adopt suitable measures to drive out those who are occupying or abusing PRH. As for existing public housing policy, including the so-called well-off tenant policy, the LTHS Steering Committee is discussing that. There are different views. I know Mr. Ng is targeting the present well-off tenant policy and the criteria for requiring the tenants to move out. There are two pillars. One is income, the other is assets. When the policy was first set, the policy consideration was that the household had the income might not be able to buy property in the private sector. In order not to cause a great shock, two criteria have to be considered together. I understand Mr. Ng's view. Just to interrupt, I hope you will speed up the process of solving the problem. Otherwise, how can you help those who are living in subdivided flats? I've heard Mr. Ng's view. Members, I have no power to stop late members or members who come in late, rather, to ask questions. I therefore ask members who have entered late whether they have any questions asked the first round. Now, for those who have pressed the bell and asked for the second round, I have to apologize to you if you can't have time. You don't have time to ask your question. I've noticed that Chris Chung and Chen Yun Han have pressed the button to ask the first question. I want to follow up on 012. Now there are too few vacant units. Is there any way for the administration to increase the supply of flats? Now for families who want to merge the units, will you allow them to do that, or will you implement that as soon as possible? Second, whether you will increase the plot ratio of your housing estate in order to increase the supply. Secretary, as for the vacant units, that is a decline. Number of vacant units is a matter of interpretation. Now that will also mean that we have made full use, make better use of the units. As for the demand side, that will mean we have less room to meet rising demand. Redevelopment, therefore, is an important factor. We need to consider redevelopment potential. In answering members' questions, I've already stated this point. In terms of redevelopment, we'll make full use of our resources in terms of height, in terms of density, without undermining the environment or breaching planning criteria. Will make good use of resources. Mr. Chung. Now the housing society is to redevelop Mingwa Taiha. Will you try to increase the number of flats? Because this is a big site. The housing society is to redevelop Mingwa Taiha, and in doing so, it will increase the supply of units. But it takes a long time to redevelop Mingwa Taiha. A housing society has to find suitable resettlement units. Chris Chung. Now, because of household splitting, some young people are living apart from elderly people. But if now they want to care for the elderly and they want to merge their households. Now, will you facilitate that? And as for those who are applying for PRH, they apply because they want to live with their elderly. Will you give priority to them so that they can live with their elderly first, so as to reduce the number of waiting? Now, we have a program to enable family members to live together with their elderly. They can merge their households with their elderly. In fact, Albert can speak on that. Mr. Lee, the Deputy Director. Concerning the program mentioned by Mr. Chung, whether it is for those on the waiting list or for the current tenants, according to our policy, if they are to care for the elderly, they can apply to live in the same housing estate of the elderly. As for the concession or speeding up or allocation, it really depends on the different criteria under different programs. Mr. Chung, I have no further questions. Thank you. Chen Yunhan. Thank you, Chairman. My question is rather broad. Now, in our discussion in relation to the poor, there is the issue of supply of housing in the private market and also public housing. The FTU has all along been putting emphasis on public housing supported by home ownership and also private housing. The administration stopped production of HOS. Because of that, property price rose exorbitantly. And up till now, there is no overall package to deal with the housing issue. At the housing panel meetings and on other occasions, I told the Secretary that there were many people living in PRH, and many young people were forced to leave their PRH units. And under the so-called Harmonies Families Priority Scheme, you are not helping those young people who want to live with their elderly. Now the people are also complaining, the tenants are complaining against the well-off tenant policy. Now, can you deal with their income? It is really unfair. The young people live with their parents, but they don't give all their incomes to their parents, and you count all their incomes. So is it possible to adjust your policy so as to deal with that anomaly? Now, concerning subdivided flats mentioned by Mr. Ng, there are many waiting for PRH and they're living in subdivided flats. CY Leung said something about that. In fact, those living in subdivided flats are facing difficulties, like those who lived in the squatter huts at the hillside. You are not able to meet your 3-year commitment. Some are waiting for 5 years, some have been waiting for 7 years, and yet they are not given any flat. You really don't have a policy to deal with their difficulties. I want to ask the administration, do you have a whole package to deal with policy? Now, it's good to have started your HOS, but you still have to wait for 4 or 5 years before those units are available. Are you going to review your well-off tenant policy? You gave us an undertaking, but at the poverty subcommittee on poverty, you talked, you mentioned an entirely different story. And in fact, your Harmony Family Program doesn't work, and young people are not able to buy their flats. How are you going to solve the problem?
Yeah.
Secretary. Well, when it comes to housing policies about the 3-tier mentioned, the view is actually similar to that of the administration. What we have in mind is that to provide for the grassroots subsidized rental housing, and that is very important. We see that the demand is increasing. That can be seen from the number of applicants on the waiting list. That's why we have put in a lot of effort to increase production. And when it comes to subsidized housing for sale, say for example HOS, we think it is necessary. When it comes to the property market, we aim at stabilizing the market, but we are mindful that however much we want to stabilize the market, a large number of Hong Kong people rely on subsidized housing, whether it is rental or those for sale. So the proportion will increase. And when it comes to other measures, say for example, well-off tenant policies and how to take care of people living in subdivided flats, they will be discussed in the LTHS steering committee. When will we hear something concrete about it? I can't say whether we have done enough or not, but when it comes to the long-term housing strategy, the steering committee is discussing it, and hopefully in the middle of this year we will be able to come up with a consultation paper. And in the steering committee, there are different views. For some, they wonder whether it can be relaxed so that young members in the family don't have to move out to avoid the well-off tenancy. Well, I will extend the meeting by 10 minutes for all 5 members to ask questions. I read them out. Joseph Lee, Li Chui-Chiang, Wu Ji-Wei, Sin Chung-Kai, Frederick Fong. Mr. Joseph Lee. I want to follow up on an unfinished question on 029 about the supply of PRH units in the coming 4 to 5 years. It says that in the coming 4 years, on average, there will be 9,000 units. But for the new applicants, if they are not elderly, singletons, or they're under other different priority programs, so they will have to wait for a long time. So in relation to the 9,000 units, are there any in the urban area? Secretary. We will take stock of the latest situation, that is the number of vacant flats and supply of PRH units in different districts. We will put in place a relaxation in a timely manner to address the situation. But we're talking about limited supply, so we encourage applicants to choose other districts. Mr. Lee, that's a no then. But there are more units in the urban area, but he doesn't allow relaxation. No, that's not what I said. It has happened before. When we see that there is an increase in supply in the urban area, we will relax it. It's done by a face-by-face approach. Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. It's a follow-up question on 041. Actually, there are 3 questions. If you can't answer me now, please supply me with a written answer. I would like to get some detailed information about PRH. 4 years from 2016 to 17. And I now get some information about the number of flats that will be constructed. But I'd like to get more information. Say, for example, distribution of flats by district. If you can give me the specific location of the sites, the estimated completion date, that will be good. Are you talking about year 2016 to 17? No, from now to 2016-17. And in relation to redevelopment of all estates, that's one way to increase supply. In the near future, when it comes to this aspect, are there any plans? The third question. Has the administration considered working with the HS, the Housing Society, for them to manage redeveloped old estates? You finish? Yes, Secretary. In the coming 5 years, when it comes to new units, we will be able to give information about districts, but when it comes to the specific sites, we still have some other works to do, say, for example, planning and change of land use. It's not ideal to divulge such information before we have a specific plan. Of course, we'll actively consider redevelopment. We will take into account the potential and also supply of flats for the interim period. The role of the HS is to supply subsidized housing. If necessary, there are different ways of cooperation, and that is also the policy of the administration. Mr. Wuchiwei, I would like to follow up on my own question, that is 059. In the reply, the 5th paragraph, they have left out a number of years, 2018, 19, and 20. When it comes to public housing production, the Secretary said that it will take time to produce housing, about 5 years. So if they don't have the supply of land in hand, or if they don't know whether there will be land supply, then is it the case that the number of the level of supply for 2018, 19, and 1920 will drop drastically? I said for the 5-year period, that is from now to 2017, we have already supplied information about land supply. For the next 5 years, that is starting from 2018, we're actively cooperating with the Development Bureau to identify sites suitable for public housing. I understand that, but the Secretary and the PS said that it will take 5 years. It's already a compressed schedule. So we're talking about 2019, 18-19 and 19-20 for the 2 years. If you don't have land available, does it mean that there will be a drastic drop of supply for those 2 years? So can you tell us something about the number of units produced for those 2 years? We will give the information in the housing panel for our progress. When? Well, every year we have to give a report about the coming 5 years. I really need an answer. They say they will take 5 years. So from now to 2018-19 is 5 years. But you don't have land available in your plan. That means there won't be any housing production. We did not say that there won't be any land available. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, I was talking about the demand-side management measures, about the objective indicators. When the administration sees that the market is exuberant, they introduced different measures of different levels, some harsher than others. But when market prices are dropping, of course, the administration would say they will closely monitor the situation doing it on a daily basis. But are there any objective indicators? Say, for example, when the prices drop to a certain level, such level, other measures will be introduced? Or are you still waiting for the chief executive decisions or instructions? Or are there some objective indicators? Because it will be more in line with public administration. Now, we're not waiting for a decision of the CEO, how he wishes it to be done. There are, of course, some quantified indicators, some easily quantified, others not as easily. We'll take them into consideration in a comprehensive manner. We'll monitor the situation and take into account comments. And recently there are press reports about price being slashed and that the market prices will drop by 10 or 15%. They are just speculations. So far there is no clear trend identified. Mr. KK Fong. I think people find it hard, and not just because about insufficient supply in both private and public market, and there are also some other problems. So are there some kind of temporary measures to tackle this housing problem? Say, for example, if in the coming 2 years certain applicants will be allocated PRH housing, then will they be housed in housing estates to be redeveloped? If in 2 years' time they will be given a flat. So will the administration convince developers or the URA to make available such units for your use? For those who've already been waiting for 3 years, just house them in these units first. This will also help with the competition for rented housing in the private market. You're talking about having them leased out on a short-term basis. This point has been floated in the steering committee, and we're considering whether it is feasible. Of course, when it comes to housing policies, we try to make optimum use of the land. There is little elbow room. Of course, we will start the redevelopment as soon as possible, so the time when they will be laid idle will be very short. Mr. Fong. And I think the TVB has done a feature on Pak Tin Estate. It's rather nice, and it will be redeveloped in about 2 years' time. I don't know when that will actually take place. We'll have a break for 4 minutes, and in 20